So I want to record our thanks to Steve Olivier for being generous enough to give us Tanni's contact details. And in fact, he got in touch with Tanni first of all and asked her if she would agree in principle to come with us. So thank you very much to Steve Olivier for that. So as I've already said, this event is to celebrate International Women's Day. Without any further ado, let me crack on and introduce you to the two principal speakers. Sarah, you're shaking your head.
Yeah, because I can't get Tanni unmuted. So Judith, could you please unmute Tanni?
I'm unmuted.
Oh, thank God for that. Welcome to RGU.
It's always good to have your main speaker unmuted, isn't it? So let me introduce Tanni, because actually this is getting ridiculous and we need to let her speak. So obviously most people will know Tanni for her extraordinary sporting career. She really is an outstanding athlete. So over the course of 5 Olympic Games, she has won 11 gold medals, 4 silvers and a bronze in wheelchair racing. She decided that she wanted to be a wheelchair racer when she was 13, and my goodness, she stuck to her guns there. Tanni became a dame for her services to sport in 2005, and in 2010 she was created a life peer. She is Baroness Tanni Grey-Thompson. She is a politician, a broadcaster and activist. She's passionate about equality of opportunity for women and for those who declare a disability. Tanni actually visited Aberdeen in the not too distant past. So she was awarded a Lifetime Achievement Award at the Sports Personality of the Year in 2019, which was actually held at the Exhibition Centre in Aberdeen. So she sort of can imagine where we're all sitting, although I'm sure that we're gathering people from all over the country, not just Aberdeen tonight. Tanni had to go to the Lords to speak on the domestic abuse bill, and that is why she is a little late today, but I'm sure that we can understand that. And Tanni will be in conversation tonight with RGU's own Professor Sarah Pedersen. Sarah is Professor of Communication and Media at the university, and she also serves as the university's Gender Equality Champion. Her latest book was published in November 2020 on the politicisation, that's quite hard to say, of Mumsnet. And she's also an expert on Scottish suffragettes and the suffragette movement in general, and is the author of a book on the suffragettes and the press, which was published in 2017. Her latest research is looking at various aspects of the Gender Reassignment Act. So without further ado, Sarah, I'm going to hand over to you.
Well, thank you, Alison, and thank you very much for joining us, Tanni. Let's just get straight in. So much to ask you about and so many different aspects, but I wanted to ask you, Alison has just listed some of the amazing achievements that you had at the Paralympic Games and the 30 world records. If you had to pick one of your amazing sporting achievements to sort of say that it was the best, which one would it be?
It's not usually kind of a gold medal. So, you know, if I had to pick my top 10 races, probably half of them might be a gold medal at major games, and the other are things that I kind of felt that I competed really well at. It's probably 400 meters, which it was at Swiss Nationals 2002, about 6 months after having my daughter, and there'd been lots of coaches who said, you know, you can't be an athlete and a mum and you'll be soft. And I remember saying to one of my coaches, let me stick a bowling ball inside you, slash it out with a knife and see if you're training 2 weeks later, which gets you to hold off actually. But anyway, so it was one of those moments where it was just the perfect race. So 400 meter races are actually really technical. There's about 8 segments to it, really dull. And it was one of those times where I just nailed every single segment and I broke the world record. And my husband, who's my coach, hadn't looked at the time, but I came off the track, and that you just sometimes have those days where it just happens. And it was quite funny. So I came off the track and my training group had seen the time and I'd seen the time and we're all very happy. And Ian hadn't. And he said to me, yeah, your first 5 pushes weren't very good. I went, okay. And my training partner, Jason, sort of pointed and said, have you seen the clock? And Ian said, well, at the time we weren't going for time. So And then he sort of looked and went, yeah, that's quite quick. Your first 5 pushes could have been better. So it's kind of, there's lots of stuff wrapped up in that about training groups, teams, support, critical friend. I mean, it's all complicated, but as a perfect race, there was nothing better in that moment or probably any point in my career that I could have done better. So that doesn't often happen, but hopefully, you know, a few times in your career it does, where everything is perfect.
So I know we've got some young girls here tonight, and also parents of young girls. So if you were going to give them some advice, if they were interested in a career in sport today, what would you say to them?
I think the most important thing is find something that you really love doing, because you have to love it even when you hate it, or when it's hard and it's difficult, and you know, when the weather's miserable and you have to train outside. So you have to find something you want to do, and then I think it's about finding good coaches, good people around you. It's about training hard and training smart, and that's kind of easy to say. I think one of the challenges we've got now in British sport and elite pathway is that we expect or want, for some reason, people to concentrate at a really early age on one sport. And I think multi-sport approach is good, that you need, especially until your age of 16, you kind of need to be doing other things, because it all kind of, so, you know, is pennies in the bank. But I think you need to have some choice in what you do. But we put a lot of pressure on young athletes. But yeah, find something that you love, because you know, my sporting career, 5 Paralympic Games, 16 medals, it's actually only 19 and a half minutes of my life. So, you know, the reality of my life as an athlete is actually living in the northeast of England, training on the trunk road between Redcar and Middlesbrough, covered in snot and being really cold. So that's the reality. The reality is not these like little moments in time. So that's why you have to love it.
Yeah, you said your husband was your trainer as well. Now that's interesting. How does that work as a relationship?
Well, I mean, it sort of all happened in different stages. So actually, we met when I was 17 and he was 21. And I was just about to go to Loughborough. He was doing his PhD in Manchester. And I think he said to me, "Oh, you're going to that PE college, aren't you?" So we didn't speak for several years. So we started off kind of training together. And then I think we became boyfriend and girlfriend, and then coaching. And it sort of all went in stages. I think what we were really clear on doing is, especially if we were away with a GB camp, is to really clearly define our relationship. So, you know, we might have a husband-wife row, but we wouldn't do that with other athletes around. And then, you know, you'd have an athlete performance-directed discussion, which might be quite, you know, have a robustness to it. But it was splitting those things into boxes, because I think for me, what we were both really conscious of, with other people on the team and younger athletes coming in, we couldn't have a husband-wife row in front of the squad. So there were a couple of times it's like, right over there now. But also, I think for me as an athlete, being very positively challenged to be better and to be the best I could be was something that worked. And I think what Ian would probably say I was uncoachable, actually. But that's a whole nother debate. But I think for me, it was important for me to be in a relationship with someone who understood my passion for sport. And unfortunately, you know, there were other boyfriends along the way who didn't understand, or, you know, it's me or sport, and like, where Ian would have never have asked me to choose. Actually, if he'd asked me to choose, I probably would have picked him, which says a lot about things. But I think in sport, you have to give so much of your time in your life. And it's true, if you want to be really good at something, it takes a lot of time, and you have to make choices. And you know, for me, it was important for someone to understand that passion that I had for wheelchair racing, and he was incredible. He's changed career twice for me. Once when we had our daughter, so that I could carry on competing for another couple of years. And then when I went into politics, he changed his career again. So, you know, he's made a lot more sacrifices probably than I've had to, because he's been there to support me.
So you're now board member for a number of organisations such as Duke of Edinburgh, London Marathon, Sports Aid Foundation, and many more. Now, we know that women make up about 2/3 of the voluntary sector as workers in it. But when we look at boards, men completely dominate.
Yeah.
So how can we encourage more women to get involved at board level?
It's fascinating, you know, the changes that I've seen over the years. And in sport, it's getting better, but it's not as good as it should be. And there's a whole debate about whether you have to behave like a man, whatever that is, in terms of, you know, fitting in. You know, I see a lot of really good women who just look at the environments on boards and don't want to be part of it because of how people behave and how men behave. And I said this a little while ago, I'd go on far less about needing equal representation on board, well, a bit less. You know, if all the men that sat on boards were really good, but I see some really average men who sit on boards. Yeah. So, you know, I think a lot of it is about, you know, women having the confidence to put themselves forward, about it being something they're interested in, about they care about women. I think women, you know, make some really big decisions about how they choose to give their time, and whether it's a paid board membership or it's a volunteer. You know, I know in one sport that I spoke to a number of women who just said, you know, they don't want to be around for 35 years to be the last one living to get on the board. And that's some of the representation that has existed in sport before. So I think there's change coming, but I've been arguing for some of this stuff for 35 years. And I think lockdown has made me far less patient. So for me in sport, actually, if governing bodies don't have equal representation and don't have diverse representation, cut the funding. They have had long enough to change. And if business can change, you know, where there has been a lot of changes, I think sport can change as well. But I think there's a lot we need to do in terms of board training support, having other women on board. You know, if I've been on a board where I've been the only woman, and that's not always been difficult, but being the only one with a certain viewpoint has been, and some of actually the best things I've seen on board. I sat on one board where actually, you know, if I said something, I got ignored. And this is a bit of a gross generalization. I was the only woman, and a man said it, and they all go, "Oh, that's brilliant. That's so clever." And then actually what happened was another man on the board very quickly noticed how I was being treated. And he would say, "Isn't that what Tanni said?" And so it wasn't me doing it. So it's that kind of, those connections I think are really important to have. But, you know, the best things I've been on are where people, you know, the chair listens to other people's views and wants to be critically challenged and wants, you know, to have diversity. So, you know, we have to keep pushing for those things. So I spend a lot of time with, you know, I try and find young women who are interested in politics, or sportswomen who are interested in politics in lots of different ways, and talk to them about the experience, the good and the bad, because it's not, you know, there's some really good stuff that's come along the way, as well as some challenges. And I remember sitting in one meeting where the chair, I asked a very legitimate, sensible question, and he picked up my hands and he started stroking. He said, "I'll have a cup of tea with you and explain how," wasn't that long ago. And I remember just going, and all I did was, because if I'd said anything, it would have been very impolite. I remember just looking at my hand, just looking at everyone around the table, just, yeah, because I'm afraid I do have a bit of a fiery temper at times. So it's learning how to deal with that. And I made sure I came out and I spoke to every single board member, said, "Did you see that?" And, you know, so in that moment, it would have been great for me to tell him what I thought of him, but actually that wouldn't have changed anything. So sometimes you do, this is not about being compliant, and it's not about, you know, because I think there is sometimes a lot about, you know, women should be seen, and I mean, still, we're talking, women are expected to be seen and not heard. But this is about, for me, you know, just changing the conversation in a positive way. And now I'm in a position where I think for me, I try and work with people I like and respect. And that is a massively privileged place to be. I absolutely know that, because most people don't have that kind of choice. But I think what I say to a lot of young women coming through is that try and be in a position where you get to work with people that you like and respect. Yeah. You know, and I think that sets a tone. I think that sets an expectation on young women about what they should expect from their life in work and what other things they want to sit on.
So that kind of takes me really well into the theme for today, International Women's Day, according to the UN, is women in leadership achieving an equal future in a COVID-19 world. So sorry to ask you this, but what What do you think we need to do to achieve an equal future in a COVID-19 world?
I mean, COVID's been really hard. I think what it's done is it's highlighted things that we already knew. So we know that, physical activity from women under COVID has been really difficult. So yeah, it's been lovely. I've seen lots of women out on bikes and running, but also there was some stuff in the press a little while ago where some Welsh athletes were saying that they're normally training in a centre, but because of the rules, they weren't allowed to train in the squad centre. And some of the misogynistic, really vile stuff that have been shouted at them while they were going training. So I think, we need to recognise that. We know that women have been, massively impacted by working from home, it's not working, it's living at work, by homeschooling, about trying to do, all the things that are expected of them. And I do remember there was when my daughter's 19 now, but when I had her, I remember thinking I was going to turn into this earth mother and start baking bread. No idea why I thought that. And somebody said to me, you don't need to be the best mum in the world, you just need to be the best mum to Karis. And it was a really good friend who then said, if Ian divorces you and marries an earth mother, you're screwed. But and it was kind of jokey but quite serious, because I never felt that I fell into or would fall into all the pressure of being a mum. I certainly don't fall into the pressure of what a wife is, but actually I found I fell into the pressure of being this perfect mum. And it was like, actually, I can't, I've got the capacity, time or anything to do that. So, I mean, I think as we come out of this, we need to have much better understanding of the massive pressure that women have been under and the care responsibilities and all those things. And, the legislation that I'm involved in today, and apologies for joining late, but I was speaking in an amendment because the government at the moment aren't convinced that disabled people should be included in domestic abuse legislation. And that's what I was speaking on. We've seen the impact of domestic abuse during COVID. I mean, it's horrific. So it's not just kind of talking in circles about these things. It's about people genuinely thinking about how to change things. And I guess one of my frustration, which has been there for a while, is I guess some of the things of people saying the right thing publicly, but actually do they change behaviour? So I was having quite a robust discussion with somebody in sport who were talking about diversity in that sport, and some of the things they were putting on their email and underneath their name, like, yeah, great, but what were they personally doing to change the diverse people in sport? Actually nothing. So for me, just putting something at the bottom of your email is not enough. It's kind of going, oh, I'm here, but it's not actually changed behaviour. So I think we have to challenge ourselves a bit more to what are we're going to do. I think some of that's about women coming together. I think there's something in terms of talk about your lived experience, but not everyone wants to do that. And I think it's putting pressure on those in power to do more, not just talk about it, but actually do something that affects change.
So I mean, obviously, you're a baroness, you're in the House of Lords. We've just seen how that impacts on your life on a day-to-day basis. But what for those of us who are not in the House of Lords, what does that actually mean? What do you do on a day-to-day basis? How much of your time does it take up?
That's a really good question. So, politics is not particularly taught in schools. So the job of anyone in the House of Lords, it's really simple. Well, I describe it in a simple way. Our job is to be a check and balance on the government, to say to the government of the day, is that the best you could do? We think you should have another go. And there's some things we can send back 3 times. There's some things we can send back till we're bored. And it's our job just to say, have another go. So that's we're not there to run the country. But I think one of the things is that in terms of the expertise in the Lords, we're there to bring our expertise. The Commons can do things a bit more generically, and we do things in detail. So it varies week by week. The hardest part, I think, traditionally has been being away from home. I live in the northeast of England. I work 300 miles away from where I live. So that's been, work-life balance has always been difficult. I went there when my daughter was 7, and being away all week is hard. Again, that parental guilt. And there's things that you can protect. Like, I have to say, I am so glad I don't have to do Christmas plays anymore and things like that. God, wow. They don't warn you about that when you become a mother. So, or the, coming home at 7 o'clock and saying I need green felt when all the shops shut by us at 7:15, things like that. There's things you can protect. The stuff you can't protect is the breakfast, the meals, the casual, the chat in the kitchen, all those things that I felt I was missing out on. Interestingly, I've more recently spoken to Karis about that and said, do you feel you missed out? And she was like, not really, because she doesn't know any different. So yeah, the challenge, it varies. I mean, week by week, it can be, we can work 60 hours a week, you can work 30 hours a week. There is no plan. And in terms of speaking, you don't know when you're going to speak. So you have a list. So today, I spent most of today panicking about this event. And my best case scenario at midday was I was going to speak at 8, and then it's like 5 to 6. And you kind of go, so yeah, it does take over your life. But then you can choose not to do it. I didn't have to accept the appointment. I knew what I was getting into when I accepted it. And you can choose to walk away. But while I still have the energy and the resilience to keep going on the things that I care about, I think it's important to do it. And it comes back to the privilege bit. It's a very privileged position to be in to try and change legislation. The reality is most of the stuff I do, which is welfare reform, legal aid, is a really tough gig to get through any government. So, you have to learn and be better next time. Actually, a lot I learned from sport is quite useful in terms of the resilience that you need. But yeah, I think I would have absolutely kicked myself if I'd said no to the opportunity to try and change legislation. The hard bit is I get treated 3 very distinct ways. One way is an ex-athlete, which is generally quite nice. A middle bit is as a parliamentarian, where either people really like or really hate what I do. And then the third way as a disabled woman is where I experience most discrimination. But what I do find as a woman in public life, there's quite a lot of abuse that comes with that. And for having a view, for putting yourself above the parapet, I have had emails, we know where you live, watch your back, we're coming for you. I mean, the first one that you get that just calls you an effing idiot is quite upsetting. And then, you don't ever get blasé about it, and you try and understand that where people's anger is coming from in terms of why they've written that. But sometimes the abuse that comes with that, I think that's what a lot of us in Parliament are very keen to work on, because yes, it does affect women coming into politics, but I think also it affects everybody actually in politics. Everyone should have an opinion. You want people to have an opinion, but it's what you do with that opinion that's really hard. And I do think at the moment it's particularly bad for women in politics or women in public life to have an opinion, because then we're told we can't have one.
How's the move to online worked for you as far as the House of Lords is concerned because of COVID?
It's been amazing. I never thought we would do House of Lords online. Never in a million years. There was sort of on and off talk about voting online, and the team have been incredible. I'm in an institution that there's been a building on the site of Westminster since 1079, and we probably haven't changed some of our rules in several hundred years. There's maybe been a bit of a sort of change, but not. There's a lot that hasn't. And then suddenly, so the positive of it is that it's enabled us all to stay engaged in our work. The challenge is that it's made it harder for us to challenge government. And I think the government's probably quite mixed on it, really, because voting, we've got an app on our phones where we vote, and you have to, double stage factor face authentication to get through to make sure it's us voting. But the voting number and voting against the government is really high, which I'm not sure they're terribly keen on, but it has made it harder to challenge, because you can't. Previously, you could just jump in a debate and you could just join in. Now you have to register and put your name down. You have a speaking list, and so it's changed it. So there are some things which I think are quite useful that I'd like to keep. I think when we come out the other side, for some people would like to enable them to carry on doing their work remotely. I think there's some disabled people that it would be very good for them to be able to do that remotely. But there's some things that I would like to get back to in person. So I personally think voting in person is quite important. There is something really powerful about watching which way someone walks. And in our chamber, if you walk one way, if you agree with them, the amendment and you walk another way if you don't. And there is something really, really powerful about looking someone in the eye when they're voting against you. And also I think because it takes effort. So, I mean, I only vote on something if I can explain in 5 sentences why I voted a certain way. Not that many people ever ask me. But there is something very powerful when it takes 20 minutes of your day to vote and you've got to physically walk I say walk and push, but you know what I mean? You know, you physically have to walk out the building and the room one way. I think that's really important. So yeah, it's been okay. You know, it's not ideal. I mean, the other one that, and nowhere should the House of Lords. That's my husband, Ian, who's just walked in. He's brought me coffee.
See, this is
Thank you. This is service. Thank you very much. We were just talking about this is our new way of working, isn't it? If it's not a husband or a child or a cat, I was saying about the Lords. Yeah, we're never going to get any sympathy, but you know, the way we're being paid in lockdown is very difficult. And what I do worry about is that we're not really being paid the same way that we were. And so we don't get any staff. And if you want staff, you have to pay for it out of your own money. And because we're not getting paid in the same way, it has been very difficult on a number of my colleagues. So, you know, the assumption that everybody who's in the Lords is loaded is so far from the truth. So I do worry that is going to decrease diversity. And especially as we're trying to attract, and we are putting younger people in, but the reality of it is we all get 1 year older every year, so it increases the average age. But actually the fact we don't have a pension, you know, we're paid in a really odd way. I think it makes it very difficult for some younger people to make those choices about whether this is the route into politics they would want to go. I'm not asking for sympathy because we shouldn't, but we need to address some of these issues about whether it's a full-time job or not, or how or the other bit is I've got colleagues that you know, they're off working in their area of expertise, and they only come in when there's a debate on their area of expertise. So you don't want to lose some of the good things about the Lords, but also it's not sustainable in the current format, I think, for much longer.
Yeah. I mean, I've been looking it up, and there's 34% of members of the House of Lords are female, which is slightly better than the House of Commons. But of course, the House of Lords includes seats for hereditary peers, for which women continue to be ineligible. So there's a whole tranche of seats there that women could never get hold of. And obviously, there are over 800 in the House of Lords at the moment, and frequent calls for reform. How would you reform it?
So the total number is 800, but the number who actually contributes on sort of a very regular basis is about 450. The reality is you need a bit more than that because it's not just the chamber. We have a secondary chamber called Grand Committee. We have a lot of select committees. You need numbers to be able to populate all those different parts of it. I do think the number has to come down, and I think we now at least have a method that people can retire, which is better. I mean, it used to be that you had to write this really awful letter that said that you could no longer contribute because you weren't fit and able to do so. I mean, that's just a really miserable. I think it's a real struggle to do it on age. Or, I mean, a lot of people are saying whether we have a 15-year term. I mean, it took me a couple of years to really figure out the place and really be able to sort of contribute, I would say, very, very effectively. And I took it, you know, seriously as a full-time job. So, you know, 15-year terms quite interesting. I mean, I've got colleagues who are 95 who are just unbelievable and who've forgotten more than I will ever know. So I don't think age is quite the right way to do it, because there is something in bringing the experience. So I'm giving you lots of things that I don't think I'd do. Personally, I don't think an elected second chamber is everything it's cracked up to be, because either you get everything through or nothing through. But also what we currently have is not right. I mean, we do have, we've had two. I used to share an office with a female hereditary, and there are a tiny number of women. So if you can't find a male heir, then the male title holder gets to pick which of his daughters gets it. So it's not even the oldest daughter. So I mean, I would change it so that the titles could go through the female line as well. So it's not beyond the wit of man to figure out a title. The issue you have is that Baroness is the highest title I can get in my own right. To get a higher title, well, apart from Queen, which is not going to happen, I need to be married to a man. So there are issues in terms of, say, a duke passing their title down. If their oldest child was a daughter, Duchess is not quite the right title because then the husband, not beyond the wit of man to sort that out. And so for me, this might be quite controversial, I would retire titles for wives who are married to somebody with a title. If that makes sense. Mm. So because as a peeress, my husband doesn't get a title. He doesn't want one. I'm really not bothered. But you're a lady if you're married to a sir. You're a lady if you're married to a baron. You're a lady if you're the daughter of a duke, and you're a lady if you're a baroness. And so we're all lady. And so, I would just get rid of the Duchess title. And there's a lot of people who don't think that's terribly nice, but hey, I think we can find a more equitable way of passing the title down. So that's what I do.
Thank you.
And I'll be real, my view on hereditaries has changed quite a lot. So when I first went there, I was like, I know, but and we do have some who come from unbelievably privileged backgrounds. But we've also, one of my colleagues lives in a 3-bedroom semi on the south coast because one of his grandfathers hated the son, so spent all the money on women and alcohol and gambling. So not everybody comes from exactly the same. So I did share an office with a female hereditary. She had a really interesting view of the world where when she voted on something, she was thinking about 50 years ahead. She wasn't thinking 5 years ahead or parliamentary terms or next year. She did bring this different view, which was I think, very, very interesting.
Thank you. I'm going to bring Alison in here now because I know she's been keeping an eye on all the questions people have been writing. Are you with us, Alison? Okay. Yes.
Yeah.
So can you tell us ask Tanni some of the questions that people have been putting down?
I can, yes. There have been loads of questions. First of all, I think people have commented on how warm and authentic you are, Tanni. I think they're really interested in the conversation, actually. So I'm just going to go through the questions in order. So Tanni has asked, what allowances are there in the D.of.E. Award, Duke of Edinburgh Award, for people with disabilities?
Good question. So I'm now chair of the Duke of Edinburgh Awards. I took over last year, and actually I'll be honest, I didn't do my D.of.E. award. I started, but I went off to become an athlete instead. But lots of my friends did it. My sister did it, changed lives. So actually within each of the regions or the home countries, we're working really hard to enable disabled people to do it. So in terms of looking at the individuals and having a conversation with them between whether they're doing it through school or through a youth club, then having a conversation with people who are in the award to find things that challenge. And I guess that one of the areas that probably comes up for most debate is the expedition. And finding, so we had a case a little while ago where a group of disabled people, wheelchair users, wanted to do their expedition. And obviously camping and tracking for miles and miles is really not easy. So my suggestion was actually trying to get across London on public transport as a disabled person. And the fact that on a bus you can only have one wheelchair user at a time, try getting 10 wheelchair users across London together. So there is a lot of discussion around what is the challenge. And I think what COVID's enabled us to do is be really creative in terms of the volunteering, the skills, and just enabling young people to do it. The hard bit is that the expedition's been impossible to do in COVID. Yeah. So we've got a whole bunch of young people that we want to get through. But I think we're in a really interesting place right now in terms of, I think, with hires low, exams being cancelled, and you know, young people feeling quite a lot, you know, it's a big percentage of their lives that's been lost in the last year. For me, it's not so much, you know, I've been home more than I've been home for 30 years. It's been quite nice in a lot of ways, but I think the award can be something that's a constant in young people's lives, to give them something to do, to aim for, to be something on their CV, although they might not think about it like that. But it's sort of a level of recognition that gives them some confidence going forward. But we're always happy to talk to young disabled people about what they want to do and how we can enable them to make it happen.
Yeah, it would certainly be distressing to think that people couldn't access something like the Duke of Edinburgh Award, which enables them to demonstrate so many skills and competence. We have students doing the Duke of Edinburgh Award. It's not, you know, not school, but you know, to think that they wouldn't be able to do that because of a disability or multiple disabilities. I think it's really good to be able to be creative about that. I'm going to move on because, as I say, there are loads of questions. So Helen asks, do you think there should be equal gender representation in positions in politics? So this is sort of connected, I suppose, with women-only shortlists, but she's asking particularly at the top of politics, right at the top. So, for example, the Prime Minister, Deputy Prime Minister kind of level.
Yeah, so I'll be really honest, I change my mind on targets and shortlists quite a lot, depending what's in front of me and what the issue is, to be honest. And I do think it's so easy to just not put women in positions of power, and to have 2 or 3 in the room and then just say, oh, you know, kind of job done. And I just don't think that's good enough, really. So I'm not sure whether it kind of works in terms of, if you have a male prime minister, you should have a female deputy prime minister. But I do think across ministerial positions there should be, you know, much greater equality. But also looking at and the intersectionality of it as well, because, you know, I've been on things where you may have more equal representation of women, but there's no diversity of thought or no diversity of background. So it's and that's really then gets quite complicated in terms of how you build a jigsaw for making that happen. But yeah, I look at other governments who do it really well, and I think there is more that we could do in terms of getting women's voice as part of the debate, or, you know, in the room as part of it. But yeah, it's not an easy one to fix.
I think that links very well to Ash. She has a question about what you think about workplaces and boards, and I suppose politics, being more open to the concept of part-time leadership positions. And she argues that women would be much more involved if that was the case.
Yeah, I mean, we did some legislation 2 weeks ago, where it's the ministerial maternity bill, which actually a female minister, if they wanted to take maternity leave, had to resign. I mean, I didn't even realise that was the case, you know, because there's always, it's kind of like, what? You know, there's plenty that we need to do in Parliament for adoption leave, parental support, remote voting. You know, MPs are having to choose, you know, do they base their family in London or their constituency? And, you know, it's some really difficult. So internally, we haven't got it even close to being sorted, let alone in the outside world. And, you know, again, as we have more younger peers. So I went to the Lords when I was 40, and I used to just have to take Karis in there with me some days. And I remember I was in the welfare reform bill and somebody tweeted and went, oh my God, someone's brought a child into the chamber. Like, you know, poor child, who did that? I was like, it's me. You know, and she basically had to sit there for 6 hours and be quiet. And we had this very complicated point system. For every quarter of an hour she sat there quietly, she got points and then she could swap them for cakes. But she basically had to sit there. It was something like 10 hours she had to sit there to get a cake and taught her to tell the time and to work out maths. So, you know, and after about 4 weeks, she was like, I'm not getting a cake. Yeah, well, there you go. Anyway, I'm not sure if that's good or bad parenting. But we had a situation where a peer had brought her baby in and there was a vote. And she was stopped from going through the lobby because she was holding the baby. And the rule is you can't take another person through the lobby with you. Now, there is not a person in the world that I think would get confused by someone holding a baby. But she wasn't allowed to. And we're basically passing the baby down the line and, you know, grabbing somebody saying, and, you know, Caris has been in a situation where we've got amazing staff, doorkeepers, where I've just left Caris because I've had to go and vote. And, you know, left Caris with one of the members of staff, who, you know, and they're brilliant, mostly ex-military, and they'll go, we'll look after your child. But, you know, that is not sensible workplace, you know, adaptations. I'd say Caris has learned a lot from it. But, you know, so yeah, we do need to be thinking about part-time. We need to think about mat leave, you know, and I think actually there's a thing where I think for a lot of men, you know, a lot of men aren't, you know, want to spend more time with their children and find it hard to because the rules. So, you know, shared parental leave. I mean, there's just so much more we could do in terms of balancing family life. I don't think we're even close to doing it. You know, job share has been talked about quite a lot in Parliament. And actually just like, why can't we? You know, there's always some stupid reason, you know, about how you vote people in. But if people are voted in on job share or the constituency, you know, agrees with it, I don't see why we shouldn't be being more creative to bring different people in, because the reality is then you get a lot of the same people who've got the resilience to get into politics. And it's pretty hard. Being an MP, getting into Parliament is pretty thankless and hard. And also staying there is not always easy to do.
I picked up on your point. You were saying in the reason that you were speaking in the domestic abuse bill was because it appears as though the government hasn't included disabled people in that legislation, or that draft legislation at the moment. And Liam has asked about the do not resuscitate issue with COVID, and this blanket do not resuscitate for people with disabilities. And his question, how do you think we can really change hearts and minds so that that isn't even a thought?
I mean, it was just really shocking to see how many disabled people got this do not resuscitate order placed on. And it's a really difficult conversation to have with people about not resuscitating a family member. And at some point, that's a really important conversation to have, you know, where actually saving somebody's life is more harmful. So, and the reason I've stopped, I'm going to apologise. I just have to go onto my app to vote because there's a vote on the amendment that I'm working on. So I might lose you. I will be really, really quick in terms of doing this. Can you still hear me?
Yes, we can still hear you.
That's good, right? I am voting right now. Oh gosh, it makes my life seem so much more exciting than it actually is. It is really not. So I am voting in favour of the amendment that I'm supporting. That is good. Like, done, right? That was good. You see, that I've just voted. Normally it's 20 minutes of my life. I can't even remember what I said. I cannot multitask to save my life.
We're talking about some of the problems with the do not resuscitate orders.
Oh, so, thank you. Yes, sorry. Yeah, how little media coverage it got was really quite shocking, actually. And it did sort of get some momentum behind it. But actually the attitude from a lot of people was, well, yeah, you know, if people are fighting for a ventilator, do we really want to be giving the ventilator to a disabled person? And that's, it's really, I find it really upsetting and really sad that we're just discounted. We're just, you know, the view is we have nothing to offer society. And if you look at, you know, the employment gap for disabled people, it's twice the national average. You look at disabled people in higher education, you know, it's just a never ending series of disabled people's voices not being listened to. And it's hard. So, I mean, one of the things that really, really frustrates me, and I mean, I worked on the bid for the 2012 Games, and I worked for the organising committee, and I worked at the Games time. 2012 was a stunning Paralympics. It was fab, and it will be the best Paralympics for a really long time to come. But quite often I get non-disabled people telling me that 2012 changed the world for disabled people. You go, the DNRs, since 2012, hate crime against disabled children has doubled. Crown Prosecution Service say, you know, they struggle to identify it, and the additional tariff is not applied. And it's this whole 2012 changed the world for a couple of Paralympians. It didn't change. But if somebody stood up and said 2012 changed the world for women, everyone in the room would sort of go, what? Or if somebody said, you know, 2012 stopped women being raped, what? But it seems that people get away with saying 2012 changed the world for disabled people. And, you know, I find it really frustrating, if I'm honest, that that we haven't been able to shift that dialogue. So, I mean, last week, European Space Agency announced that they were going to send a disabled person into space, and I got a phone call saying, "Are you really excited?" Not really. Great. I mean, great for the person who might go, but I can't get on the Northern Line in London. You know, doesn't change my life. And it was kind of really interesting where, you know, the press announcement said it was going to contact the International Paralympic Committee, as if that's the answer to everything. Our answer to everything to do with disabled people is contact the IPC. I mean, they organise a sports event every 4 years. You know, my view was they should be going to whatever the organisations are that do space stuff. But the reality is, if you look at those organisations, they don't have lots of disabled people in them. And it's, you know, it's quite hard for people who are different to get into some of these roles. So having said all that, there is actually an American amputee sprinter called Jerome Singleton, who has degrees in maths, engineering and physics, and has worked at NASA and CERN. So, you know, goes against everything I said. But, you know, the Paralympics is not the answer to everything. And another challenge without going into deep disability politics, there's a real move to stop using the word disabled and use the word para. That's fine for Paralympian, fine for Paralympics. But every sort of disabled child that does sport, they're starting to call para athletes. And there's a big difference between being a 12-year-old who does a bit of sport to being a Paralympian, and what that takes and what that is. And for me, breaking that link between disability and disability discrimination by using the word para means that nobody has to change their behaviour. We don't have to make reasonable adjustments. We don't have to make physical access better. We can just, you know, ignore it and pretend 2012 changed the world. So, yeah, I think people who kind of know me as an athlete are sometimes quite surprised that I have this kind of view. But Paralympics are brilliant, but there's a lot of people who aren't Paralympians whose lives haven't been changed by it.
Just staying on the theme of sport for a moment, Jen has asked, what's your view on the increasing whistleblowing on sexual assault in sport?
So I've been working on this for a number of years, and in 2015 the UK government asked me to do a piece of work on duty care, which I reported in 2017, and part of that was around this area. It is unbelievably difficult for an athlete to raise an issue and to call it out, either through their athlete contracts or the position of power that exists within sport. And I've had so many people who've come to me to say that they've experienced some appalling behaviour, and some of them have said they don't want to do anything while their parents are around, because their parents would have nagged, cajoled them, encouraged and pushed them, you know, to be involved in sport. I think it's really important that, and one of my recommendations is we have an independent ombudsman that athletes can go to, and there needs to be a bar, you know, to entry into the, you know, I had an athlete get in touch with me recently and said they were being bullied, and actually the coach was asking them to fill out a training diary. I mean, that's not bullying. That's actually asking you to do your job. It is not doing your job when a coach says to you, do you want to make the team? I can help you make it. There's one thing you need to do for me. No place for that in sport whatsoever. So it's very difficult for athletes to raise the issue. And usually they will be complaining to somebody in the system about someone who they're friends with. So that's why I think we need an ombudsman. Sport can't police itself. We're beyond the point. And the recent cases with gymnastics have proved, you know, in a governing body that repeatedly told me they had award-winning safeguarding policies, didn't mean anything until some very brave gymnasts came out and then the floodgates opened. So, I mean, I think if you look at the other case that was a couple of years ago now with Jess Varnish from British Cycling, and when she raised issues of behaviour and treatment, you know, she was bad-mouthed and she was told she was all sorts of things, you know, and she was flighty and she was bitter and she was twisted. What she was out of contract. And that is a big, big difference, that a lot of athletes only feel they can speak out when they're out of contract. So we have to do it. Sport should be a place where, yes, it's tough, it's challenging. You know, if I think about the top 10 best and worst things in my life, sport will be right up there. But it shouldn't break people, and it shouldn't put them in situations where their position of trust and position of power has been abused. So yes, sport can't police itself, and we need to do better, because we want it. You know, I want young people to be active and play sport, and it be a safe place for them to be. So, you know, some very brave people have come out. So we're hoping the government, certainly on, and people are shocked by this, you know, it's illegal for a teacher to be in a sexual relationship with someone who's 16 to 18. It is not illegal for a coach to be in a sexual relationship with someone who's 16 to 18. That has to change. I mean, that doesn't stop the abuse of older athletes, but at least it would set a bit of a line in the sand of what's currently happening, which is, you know, it's hard to tell the numbers because it's not legal. But I hear too many cases where a coach has turned up on usually a daughter's 16th birthday to declare their undying love. They've coached the athlete since they were 9 or 11, and the coach is 35. No, not acceptable for that to happen.
There's been a lot of positive comments about the cup of coffee that Ian brought for you. and just a really interesting question from Julie about how his support network has reacted to your success in both sport and work. He's taken the perhaps less traditional role of being the person at home.
Yeah, I mean, it's really fascinating in terms of how people treat Ian. So, you know, he's one of the brightest people I've ever met. He's got a PhD in chemistry. And then sometimes people, oh, you're at home. Oh, isn't that lovely? And it's fascinating. It is, I mean, I could write probably a PhD study on how people how they treat me for being the mum who works away. So we live in an area where a lot of people work in the chemical business, and a lot of dads work away, and that's all fine. But then me as a mum who works away, oh, you're a bad mum. And actually, you know, Ian's probably way better at being the person who's home and got Karis to do homework and got her to school, and I'm quite disorganised with a lot of what I do. So it's fascinating that what Ian got an awful lot when we were both competing would be, which I always found really interesting, it was that journalists saying to him, oh, well, she's won more medals than you. Mm-hmm. How do you feel? And it was said in that kind of tone. And Ian's response was, well, she's never beaten me, which I never did in a race. You know, I never got close to his personal bests. So I think it depends on the relationship and the individual. And I think for a lot of men, some of that has been really difficult to deal with, you know, when they're treated as if they're less than because they're in a caring role. They're actually, it's a really, really important role. And I think in some ways we've got friends who are slightly older. We've got 3 goddaughters who are, my daughter's 19, the girls are 20, 23, 25. And the dad stayed at home and the mum returned to work. And that's how so I think we've got some really good examples around us of actually what's best for you as a family. But I do remember one of my female friends who has got 4 kids, has quite a complicated job, would be deemed to be more successful or whatever than her husband in terms of what she does, who always dropped the kids at school, picked them up, baked cakes, did a million things. And I remember one time she'd made a cake for Ian. And I was like, just, you don't need to do. And she's like, yeah, well, and so, I mean, I think that comes back to some of the responsibility that someone with, I mean, it's very, very complicated stuff, but he's I'm very lucky to have someone who gets my career, and he's a big part of it, you know, in terms of, you know, talk to him about everything that I do and why I'm doing it. And I genuinely can do, not just with him being the support at home, he's a way better cook than me as well. I mean, I would literally live on ready meals. But yeah, I think the fact he's not intimidated by that is quite important. But it's sad that he's got to be that type of person to not be intimidated by people looking down on him. It is just like, get over yourself. You know, it's the people who judge, just stop judging. Just, you know, get over it.
I'm very aware we've run over time. So Alison, do you want to just pick one last question?
Oh my goodness. What shall I pick? I think so Elima has asked, how much help have you had from women who are above you, who are more senior than you? And how can women in authority or leadership help lift other women up? I think it's quite an interesting question, because we so often hear about the people becoming very senior and then you know, getting through the glass ceiling, but then pulling up the bridge after them, or the ladder, I should say, after them.
Yeah, so what's really interesting is that I think for a lot of my early years, it would be men that were, because when I started off as an athlete, I don't remember many women being in positions of power in sport at all. So I remember my first opportunity, which was to sit on a board, which was the National Disability Council, which was the oversight body for the Disability Discrimination Act. That came about because a man who worked at the Cabinet Office, who I'd had quite a robust discussion with, about roles of disabled people and things like that. He then kind of nominated me to go forward to be interviewed to sit on this board. And I remember just saying to him, you know, after our kind of row, I'm really surprised. And he was like, well, you know, you need to channel your energy into something positive. So I think some in the early stuff would be men, and it's a combination of men and women. So I think as I've got older, it's more women. I think there is some of that stuff about, you know, I talked a bit about earlier about how women think they have to behave in meetings and things. And it's how you can be your authentic self and how you can, you know, have some of the resilience to deal with the attitude around you that's important. But I spend, you know, a lot of time actually trying to connect to other women, which I think is really important to get, because I think women, I don't know, I mean, I was probably too grand a statement. I sometimes have a much more open conversation with women that I work with about what I'm doing well, what I need to improve, that helps me as an individual. But I do spend time, you know, talking to younger athletes, talking about politics, talking about how they can do things, talking about career transition, about what they want to do next, about not just waiting for it to happen. And I do think you can pay it forward. I really do. You know, I try and connect younger women into the network that I have, because, you know, there's a reason we call it the old boys network. It still exists. And actually, you know, I've got a group of friends who you know, talk about an old girls network. Although I do struggle with women my age being called girls, but I don't know, that's another thing. I don't know where that comes from. So I think connecting and just having a coffee with someone and just connecting them and helping them just learn about the world and learn about the landscape that they want to work in, I think is really important. But I think I do it because a lot of people did it for me. And not everyone's good at doing it. I'm not sure I would say I'm really good at doing it. I think I have more success than others, and some of the connections I make maybe aren't terribly useful. But I think it's just keeping open-minded in terms of building that bigger network. Because I don't want to be the only female disabled ex-athlete arguing about these things. I'd like to have 10 other ex-sports women, you know, arguing over these things as well. So, and I think as well, it's, you know, I spend a lot of time talking to some younger women, you know, where they may say they've had a bad experience in a meeting, or they've had this or that. You go, no, you know, actually it's just being really open and honest. Go, no, I've had that. You know, I have been patted on the head a bit. You know, I have had my hand stroked, as I said. I have had someone telling me I'm a stupid little girl, you know, when I was 35 in a meeting. And some of it is learning from a lot of the mistakes I've made. So, you know, it's learning to say things like, no, I would like that to be minuted, please. Knowing what you can say, and you can think all sorts of things in your head, but, you know, learning the things to say to help you get through it. And I think actually there's a lot in a shared experience. You know, men and women on this call will have experienced some really not terribly nice behaviour, and we could all do with a bit of support to help get through it at times. But yeah, I'm a big fan of paying it forward. And even, you know, where I am, you know, I've got older female colleagues and lords who help and support me to be better at what I do. And that's really lovely that there's that kind of support.
Thank you. Well, thank you very much, Tanni. Jen has just commented that watching you talk about women on International Women's Day, and at the same time multitasking, of course, voting on a domestic abuse bill is incredibly empowering and inspiring. And I think what you've been saying today has really been inspiring. And I'm thank you from all of us for sparing the time in your incredibly busy life to come along and talk to us. And hopefully one day we can actually invite you to physically come to Aberdeen as well as just virtually.
That would be lovely.
Lots of comments sort of saying how much they've enjoyed, and how, you know, grateful we are that you have been so honest and you're sharing. And I'm sure a lot of us, even those of us who do not play any sport, will you know, take away a lot from this tonight. So thank you very much, and thank you to everybody in the audience for coming along. And yes, if you want to unmute to applaud, that's what I've been doing with all of my classes. So please unmute and give a round of applause.
Thank you very much. And can I just say, I've just had a text message. We won the amendments.
Brilliant!
Oh, yay!
Brilliant. What a great time and place to end on then.
Thank you. Apologies again for the slight chaos tonight, but thank you so much for inviting me. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Tanni, and thank you to everybody who came along. And thank you, Alison, for helping me co-chair.
Thank you. Thank you. Good night.
Good night, everyone.